Hey guys, welcome back. Got a real good special for you here today. We're going to be talking about the Tsunami 2 installation, some of sound samples, and also getting to take a peek at it. So just picked these up the other day, got them at a local hobby shop. Paid about, as you can see on there, about $80, well $88 for them. We're going to take a look here at it in just a bit. But real excited about it. I think you're going to really like it, and we're going to take a look at some of the new features on it. So at first glance here, with the outside packaging, there's not a whole lot to it. If you want the whole manual, you're going to have to go online and print it out, or take a look at it just on your tablet or on your phone or on your computer, which isn't much of a problem. Soundtraxx has all that information out there already. So we're going to get it out of the box here and then take a look at some of the instructions for it. So I have it out of the packaging here for you, and we'll take a look at some of the different things that it has here, and you can see all the different prime movers that are included. And these are all the different horns. These are very, very similar to the new Tsunami decoders at first glance. Part of the reason I didn't buy one of those is that it didn't have the proper prime mover for what I'm putting mine into, which is the SD70 ACE. Those require the EMD 710, which is the G3T2. They only have the regular 710 turbo on the Tsunami. So depending on what your application is, you may want to consider the Tsunami as well, because it is about $24 less expensive per decoder than what this one is. And for the most part, a lot of the CVs are exactly the same. So this is heavily based on the Tsunami. Just a little bit more features out there for it, but for most regular sound applications, if you can do the Tsunami, that might actually be the way to go. But like I said, for the ACEs, this is kind of the only option out there. So the Soundtraxx Tsunami 2 is not a new decoder. It's been out for about a month now. This particular style has just come out. They call this the PNP, which is your board style decoder, and it reminds me a lot of the Lock Sound Select Direct. These are pretty thin, pretty nice. These are actually a little bit thinner. Exact same sizes. Well, Soundtraxx is just a tad longer, but it's pretty much your Atlas style board, drop-in replacement. So looking at some of the actual functions and things on here, at the bottom you have your motor leads, and then you have your speakers, and then there's 4 function outputs, a 1.5 volt, and then of course you have your track pickups on the outside for either end. And then at the bottom here, for that part, it's actually going to be that's where the actual tail light and headlight negative terminals are, and then kind of the next one down from the top here is going to be your common positive, which is a common positive that you can use for LEDs as well. So this isn't like the old Genesis boards where you had to solder into a specific place on the board to get the higher voltage. The only time that you use that 1.5 volt is if you're hooking up to bulbs for like an Athearn Genesis. For everybody else, we're pretty much using LEDs, so these ports here on either side are the ones that you want to use. So I worked on my lighting here and got a little bit clearer picture. Well, maybe not. Having a lot of problems with lighting here lately. See if we can get that to stay. Okay, so another thing here on the board, and this used to be a problem with a lot of the Athearn Genesis decoders or Soundtraxx decoders in general, was the fact that you would go over dirty track and it would just cut out on you. The engine would kind of jerk, or the motor would shut down, you'd hear your sound restart. It was really annoying, and that was one of the things that kind of made me go away from Soundtraxx. So I haven't experienced any problems with this board or with the Tsunami, so the Keepalive thing is, I don't know if it's something that's actually even needed, but they do have a port here, and you can purchase a product called a Soundtraxx Current Keeper, and it's kind of like a Keepalive device where if you go over a dirty track, your engine won't stop running and it'll just keep on going. I don't really know that you have a need for that unless you have a really bad electrical pickup system. I think the factory is pretty good as is. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is some of the different sounds on it. One of the great new things about this decoder is some of the new sounds that it has and some things that are unique to the industry that I haven't saw before in any other models. So taking a look at the list here, it has your typical things: bells, horns, dynamic brakes. One new thing is the manual notching feature. So you can go up or shut down and start up also, which I really like that. I actually have the engine shut down on it right now, but if I wanted to turn it back on, all I have to do is just hit F5. I did remap some of my functions, so what I have mine set as is a little bit different than the list right now. But for the most part, I did leave most of that alone. For the 3 function outputs on the board, so that's those F3, F4, F5 that's marked on the board. With that, I actually have my front and rear ditch lights hooked up to those, so I'm using all of the functions on this decoder right now. So one thing I will show you here is the cab chatter, and this is really neat. I like this feature. Not a lot of people do. You can kind of use it at your own discretion, but I remapped the function to 12. Actually, out of the box, I believe it's set to F22, but we'll go ahead and hit that here and you can hear it.
Dispatcher 86, Amtrak 5, over. Amtrak 5, over. Look for a signal at the interlocking, over. Roger, 5 out. Dispatch 11, over.
Hey, number 11, you have locomotive maintenance, give us a call about the leader.
I'll let locomotive know.
Thank you. Out.
Dispatcher out. Dispatcher CUI CX, you'll be going in for Amtrak at Springdale, over.
Crew packs, ice and water. Alright, thanks. Soul Silver Spring crew will meet you there when they get out of their paperwork stuff.
Dispatcher 86, Amtrak 5, over. Amtrak 5, over. Look for a signal at the interlocking, over. Roger, 5 out. Dispatcher CUI CX, you'll be going in for Amtrak at Springdale, over.
And as you can see, eventually it does start to repeat itself. But I think it's pretty neat, and you can use it or not use it, that's up to you. One of the other nice things that I have not saw in a decoder before is it has the, they call it clickety-clack, which is basically when the engine is moving, you'll actually hear it ride the rails. So of course we got to start the engine up here. May be able to hear it. There we go. Finally got the engine shut down. Now you can hear it. And it goes up and down with speed just like it should. It is something that's configurable between one truck, two truck, 2 axles, or 3 axles. You can customize that however you want. Okay, so some other functions it has that I won't necessarily demonstrate on this engine, mostly because it doesn't really apply. But there is an actual option on here for steam generator, so that's really cool for some of the older models out there where that's something that you want to add as far as the sound. There is also an HEP mode, which I find pretty useful for a lot of Amtrak engines. I could see that being a really cool feature. Another thing is the straight to 8 feature, which just basically kicks it from idle right up to notch 8. Or you can also use it while you're moving along, or you can manually use the F5 and F6 to move up and down. So a lot of different options, and they all seem to play So next we're going to play around with some of the air horns, because I know listening to sound samples on a website isn't exactly the same thing as listening to them on a model. So we're going to take a look at some of those right now. So I have this set to a K3LA right now. Just using this engine for an example, I know that the K5LLA is the proper horn for it, but we're just going to use this engine to play all the different horns right now and quick switch the CV. So right now, K3LA, and I'm just going to play a grade crossing sequence for each one because I think that demonstrates it the best. So next up, we'll have the K3L. And then this is going to be the K5HL, which I believe is the Gevo horn. Next up, we'll have the K5LA. And this would be the K5LH. And we've already listened to the K5LLA on some of the other videos, but we'll play it again here anyway. Now we'll have the Nathan M3. And the Nathan M5. This would be the Nathan P3. Then we'll have the Nathan P5 early. Now we have the Holden M3H. Now we'll have the Holden K5H. This would be the Leslie A125. That's a funny little horn, isn't it? Now we'll have the Leslie A200. Very cool. Now this one is listed as the Leslie S2M/A200 combo. Now we'll have the Leslie S3L. Next up is the Leslie S5T. And then the Wabco A2. And a Wabco E2. That's obnoxious. And that, last but not least, here we have the Wabco B Series 2 chime. Okay, so that's all the different horns that it has. Next up, we'll take a look at some of the prime movers. Probably not going to go over all of them, but just some of the more cooler ones here. So for the sounds of the prime mover here, we're going to take a look at the EMD 567 with no transition. Love the sound of this one, so we'll start it up. And we'll rev it up here. Love hearing that one. Next, we're going to preview the 645 Turbo, which is a pretty popular one. It's what's in SD40-2s, which everyone and their mother seems to love that locomotive and have tons of them, so this would be a pretty popular choice. So let's take a listen. And last but not least, we'll take a look at the prime mover that's native to this engine, which is the EMD 710 GC3-T2. Let's give it a start. So there's a couple other prime movers in there. We're not going to take a listen to all of them because that's just going to simply be too time consuming, and this is probably already way too long of a video. So next up we're going to take a look at CVs, fine-tuning different aspects of the engine, and some of the more pertinent things, especially for this engine, which is the front and rear flashing ditch lights and how you do that. There's an easy way and there's a hard way, so I'll show you the easy way first. So this is Decoder Pro. This is the easiest way to modify CVs on this decoder. I'm not going to go into what Decoder Pro is on this particular video. There are plenty of others out there explaining what that is, but in short, this is a program that interfaces through something like a Digitrax PR3. There's a number of other units out there, but basically it's something that makes your computer talk to the track and talk to your locomotive, and it's much easier to program CVs this way because everything is kind of in a GUI format or graphical user interface. So you can do things like the first page here, which is pretty much like every other decoder. You can program in the address, motor. You can use or not use the speed tables, function mapping. Now the easiest way to set up your ditch lights is in this page here in Decoder Pro, and you can simply choose in the drop down menu, because I have it's F3, FX, and 5 and 6 here. So those are the 4 lighting outputs that are on the board. Those are hooked up to my ditch lights front and rear. And in these settings here, you can choose basically how you want them to flash, what type of lighting effects that you want, whether they come on with F2, and so forth. That's a good, easy way to do those. Some of the other things that are in here that I do want to show you. And the sounds, you can customize those as well. Some of the different sound levels that are in here. There's random sounds that are on this decoder as well. So while you're parked or you're at idle, Fireman Fred does a number of different tasks, and you can also control in here the probability of those things. One thing that I found absolutely hysterical is that he basically takes a dump. So there is a CV in here called Toilet Flush Volume. So Fireman Fred's dropping bombs now, so no pun intended. Let's turn that shit up. Yep, says we definitely want to hear him dropping bombs. And then in here are some of the other different things, and you can control things like air conditioning, the clickety-clack volume from the rails. There's of course the standard equalizer function in here, which has been in these for many, many years. One new thing is the DDE. So this is something that's basically supposed to change the exhaust volume based on load. From the factory, it does come disabled, so it's something that you can configure. There are steps in the manual on how to do that. I'm not going to cover that in this video, perhaps in another one. And of course, it has your reverb, which is another part of the EQ. Automatic sound controls. And then your function mapping here. I prefer to do the function mapping part of it through actual throttle programming as opposed to using this interface. I kind of did all my stuff the long way because I didn't anticipate JMRI actually being updated to work with this decoder just yet, but they actually do have it, which is pretty remarkable, meaning that these have only been on the market for about a month and they already have it updated to work with them. And they also have it for the Economies as well too. So you don't have to do the long way in throttle programming. This is much, much easier for most of it. But I will post the CVs for throttle programming on how you would get your ditch lights flashing for the front and rear. And also what I listed is my basically the speed of the lighting effect. I think I got it pretty close, because you don't want the ditch lights to flash like strobe lights. You want them to kind of go on, then off, then on, then off. And we've covered that in some other videos as well, but I'll post those CVs as well. I'm using LED lighting, so that does change the values a little bit, but there's something called LED compensation, which basically adds about 128 to the particular CV that you're working with. But I'll post the ones that work with LEDs, and that mainly applies to those of us who have Norfolk Southern. But there's a lot of you out there that may even just want front flashing ditch lights, so I'll post those as well. But with that, I think I've pretty much covered everything on this here. There'll probably be some other little bits of Tsunami 2 that I post on the future, like tuning the motor, which is called the hyperdrive on this one, but we might go over that. Perhaps the DDE setup, and some more random sounds possibly as well. But I think that pretty much covers all of it. So thanks for watching, and there'll be more videos here coming soon.